Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. Seems everybody's doing this right now, so why shouldn't I? I'm going to give you 6 recommendations in terms of the Criterion collection, given that it's November. Not only in terms of the Barnes & Noble sale, but also in terms of, films to recommend to buy in and around the holiday season. And I have a mix of region A, region B here, of region of genres, but they all have one thing in common. And I've tried to pick, movies that I don't see a lot of people recommend, but also movies that focus on characters. So character studies rather than fully fledged plots or stories that take you on a journey. But each of these stories has those. This is very much around people and places and characters. And if you love the story of characters and learning about other people different from yourself, these are 6 recommendations for you. And I'm going to start with a bit of a cheat, because I'm going to start with 4 characters in one film. I'm going to talk about Kelly Reichardt's Certain Women. And Kelly Reichardt's Certain Women tells 3 different small stories adapted from a novel that tell the stories of 3 women in the American West, I think is what it says in the back of the cover, something like that. So it's sort of geographically relevant to each other. It tells the story of Laura Dern, who's trying to, work with a client, I think is probably the best way to do it, in rather uncomfortable and unnatural situations, and how she deals with that. It also tells the story of Michelle Williams, who's trying to build a new home and a new life for her and her family, but in doing so kind of realizes some things about her own family and about her own marriage and her own relationships, etc. And then the central one, I suppose, which is really Lily Gladstone and Kristen Stewart's meeting and then subsequent relationship, both romantic or otherwise, in terms of like a night school setting. And neither of these 3 films are outlandishly taking a big ride or anything, but each of them has like a poise to it. And the filmmaking, I think, in terms of Kelly Reichardt, I think is what I'd say is it has a poise and a classiness and a thing that concentrates both on people and place. Kelly Reichardt has this ability to create very believable worlds, and in many cases real worlds and real places, but to make sure that you feel comfortable as if you're immediately within it. So whether you're talking about Mixed Cutoff, or you're talking about First Cow, or otherwise, I think all of her films have that same quietness but also truthfulness in her filmmaking, and I think Certain Women has 3 very different stories within, but 3 stories that centre on real people and on real events rather than dramatic events. There are some dramatic events in the film, but that's really not the point of it. It just happens to be the situation that they're setting themselves in, and how people deal with those situations, both for good and for bad. I think it's an absolute joy of a film to watch. A pun with Old Joy there, which is another Kelly Reichardt film in the collection, and one that I hardly recommend. Next up is a film that was very high on my list of films of the year many years ago, a couple of years ago. Might even have been last year. Could have been. It's a 2011 film, and it is Pariah by Dee Rees. This was the directorial debut of Dee Rees, but she also wrote under herself, and this is a film that's a lot autobiographical from her point of view, and it tells the story of this young woman who is growing up in America in an environment that does not identify and support her in the way that she needs as a young adult. This is the character of Alike, who is struggling but finding who they are in the world in terms of their sexuality and their place, and the things that they feel that they can do to put their stamp on the world. Except they live in a world, and especially within a family, that is not going to be accepting of this. Not only is the family got a very religious view of the world, it also is going through its own turmoil and its own struggles, and the people within that family maybe having as much time to even see her as a person anymore, not just as the child that she once was, but the woman that she's becoming. I just find this incredibly powerful. Again, there's a truthfulness and an authenticity that comes from Reese's own story being told on the screen, and the power that gives it. I was floored by Pariah, and it's one that I have a very deep connection with on a lot of levels whenever I go to watch it. Brilliant film. Next one is one that I watched a few nights ago, and it's a very recent release. It's from 1985, and it's the Wayne Wang film Dim Sum, A Little Bit of Heart. Now, Wayne Wang's second film, I think, that I've seen of his from the collection, I think Channel is Missing, I'd seen before, talked about in a watch list some time ago. This is a very different type of film, although in one sense it's very similar in that he tells the story of Chinese immigrants to America and how they live. And this one is a much softer film. It tells a very soft, gentle story, I think, about families, places, people that are trying to make themselves belong, and what differences of culture that they might have compared to the rest of the world that we get a lens into seeing, but also talks about mortality and death, and this idea that you have a woman that lives in America that's not yet an American citizen but would like to be an American citizen. Why? Well, she has had her death foretold for a certain year, and she wants to get a lot of stuff done. She wants her daughter to be happy, move out and get married, all within the context of an American society, but still having this kind of Chinese and Hong Kong background that they come from. And what's really wonderful about this, now Victor Wong's in it, who's also brilliant, and it's lovely to see him in a very comedic but authentic performance, and not playing a stereotypical role that he does sometimes, but also there's a mother-daughter relationship that it's so good on screen that it'll be no surprise actually when you go to look at it. Lorraine Chu, it's actually her mother that is actually playing in it. And when I went to look to see about the acting credits of the mother, I was stunned to find that this was the only thing that she'd ever done, because again, there's an authenticity and a truthfulness in her performance and in their relationship. And this is the only film that she ever made, but her mum's just an absolute natural on screen. It's just beautiful. The extras, even in this one, Wayne Wang talks about how kind of personal story, and a lot of his films kind of are wonderful. And Lorraine Chu talks about her kind of jealousy of her mother just coming in and being so good with no formal training, etc. It's a wonderful disc, and one that I think really gives me a window into other people's lives. Next up is a film that I actually first seen in movie, and I was expecting a movie release of it at the time, but the film's from 2020, and it's Fordam More by, I didn't even realise the director's name, Ekwa Msanga. It tells a story, again, another immigrant story. There's maybe a bit of a theme that going through some of these releases insofar as they tell stories of people relocated somewhere else. Fordam More tells the story of this man who has moved to set up a new life for his family, except he moved by himself a couple of years ago, left his wife and his child behind in Angola, in war-torn Angola, and he sets up a new life. He's basically just a taxi driver, and he sets about trying to find a way or a home for himself, except I don't think he ever really expects or is expecting that his wife will ever join him, because in the interim and the long period that he's been away, he's set up his own life for himself in terms of his fans, friends, relationships, etc. that have been there, and then his wife and child arrive, and there is this question of, is he the same person anymore? Is his life the same as it was? And the things that he loved about his wife and his relationship and all of that kind of stuff from beforehand, is he even the same person to identify with? And is he identifying with even his heritage and who he was as a person beforehand? You then throw the child into the mix, of course, which he has not seen in a long time, and again is their own person with their own identity and their own dreams and things, and they're trying to fit in this very different society to go from a war-torn Angola into a modern society. And I think the whole thing is just very powerful, and it talks about connections with people and how our past and our future selves often are in conflict with each other. I think it's just a brilliant film that has like a life to it as well. You know, you really get a sense of both the cultures and the conflict that go behind all this, and maybe people that we judge upon first viewings are maybe not the way we feel about them at the end. Fordam More. Next is another very interesting filmmaker. This is Lucrecia Martel, the La Ciénaga, which is the swamp, I believe, in Spanish. Now, this isn't a singular character story like some of the rest of them either. This basically tells a story of a family. And this is an Argentinian film. Martel is an Argentinian director who I love her films. I think she has such an eye and such a way of presenting the world in a sort of muted and dark way. For them, like this Headless Woman would be like that. Zama sort of does something a bit more colourful, but again, there's a dark and a dirtiness to the story that they're trying to tell. Anyway, La Chiniega tells the story of this family. So this family and this family unit that are a bit like the place in the world that they're growing up, starting to rot, starting to fall apart at the seams. What would have been a very strong matriarchy or other within the family is just being poisoned by that very matriarchy within the family, as well as they drink or have excess. And these quite large family of kids that are growing behind them, viewing this and being influenced by this, and how that starts to affect and drip into their world. And then also the kids that have grown up and moved away and decided that they need to get out of that, they're brought back together by an event. And it goes to explore the power of family and the power of conforming and fitting into a family unit that is essentially falling apart. All within this kind of very humid, hot climate. And you get this very strong sense of a place again, and that while it's not a swamp, it feels like a swamp because of the oppressive nature of both the family and the environment that they've let go to ruin around them. I think is like an amazing character study again of a place and a type of people and etc. that I don't normally see, but again, fantastic. And I'm going to finish off with, well, why not, something with a bit lighter and something a bit different. And I'm going to talk about a film that was adapted from a play, I believe, anyway. It's Hedwig and the Angry Inch, starring John Cameron Mitchell as a relocated Berliner who comes to America, has some surgery along the way that give him an angry inch. Let you explore that within the film, but he becomes, or is, a failed punk star. I mean, it's called punk. Very little of the music actually is punk. I would say it's more power rock or something. But anyway, this is essentially a musical film. Though I think when I was told that, it sort of mischaracterizes it. A lot of the storytelling of his past and his feelings, etc., are communicated through his music. And I have to say, for an awful lot of times in life, that kind of passes me by a little bit, but it's very well done within Hedwig and the Angry Inch. There is such... you get a sense of community and a sense of how much fun this was to make. The songs are written by Stephen Trask. They work so well. There's a good mix of genres. It's very tongue-in-cheek, almost like a black comedy the whole way through, about a lot of the events that happen to John Cameron Mitchell. And the extras themselves, when they get together and you hear them talk about their experiences of making the film after doing the show for so many years and how they feel in some aspects and succeed in other ones, I think you just get a great sense of, again, character that comes through in this, not this just release, but this film. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. Like, this is just the epitome of what's great about cinema sometimes for me, and what's great about movies, and having them on home release and then sticking them on and going, you see, I not only appreciated the dark humour of that, but I appreciated the characters in it, and I appreciated the interplays and the torture. And it's funny how this contrasts with something, I believe we talked about this in the podcast episode when we was talking about Prick Up Your Ears, about how the influence of one person on another person's art can lead to jealousy and to people feeling like they're being marginalised. Prick Up Yours has one take on it. Hedwig and the Angry Inch has another one, and I think they're both wonderful. But check out Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and there's 6 recommendations for you based around character studies around people that are maybe a bit different from your own, but that I thoroughly enjoyed the journey that I went along with those. Let me know if you can think of other character films that are coming out in much the same way, or in the Criterion channel in much the same way. And I'll catch you next time on time. Take care. All the best.